good afternoon. This is Richard Hsu, host of Hsu Untied. Today, I'm very thrilled to have with me as my guest, Anthony McCusker, who's a partner at Goodwin. Anthony, welcome to the program.
Richard, great to see you. Thanks for having me.
Sure. So, Anthony, you obviously work a lot with startups. Tell me a little bit how that began. Is that something you always wanted to do? How did that kind of evolve?
That's a good question. I think like many of us that have done this for a while, there's a lot of luck involved in kind of where you end up. I started practicing right out of law school in Southern California, and that was in '95. And I was, after about 9 months of doing kind of, general corporate and some real estate work, I didn't think I was going to be a lawyer much longer because I was pretty bored. And I decided I was going to move back up to Northern California, where I'd gone to college and law school, and get into technology because it just seemed totally different. And interviewed at Gunderson Detmer and a handful of other firms, and ended up accepting the job at Gunderson for just a complete change. It was kind of a startup environment back in the day, and a total change from what I was doing. So that's how I got involved in kind of starting to do technology. And, I'm pretty grateful for that because it turned into something that I'm incredibly passionate about and love, and have enjoyed working with the entrepreneurs and other clients over the years. And kind of after that start of, gosh, I don't think I'll be a lawyer much longer. It's pretty amazing to look back 25 years later and still be as fulfilled as I am in what I kind of stumbled into, really.
Well, what is it that you like about working with startups so much?
It's really the entrepreneurs that I'm pretty inspired by. We work with, we're just lucky to work with some of the most innovative, creative, thoughtful, hardworking, dedicated people out there. And we've built, the firm that I'm at now, Goodwin, we've built sort of a practice around the life cycle of companies. So we'll work well with a couple founders and an idea through public company and beyond, and kind of everything in between, and have sort of built our skill sets and our capabilities and the types of expertises that we have, so that we can actually be that best in breed sort of service provider and business partner for clients at every stage along the way. And so being able to coach and counsel and help advise through every step of the way is what's been the thing that's kept me at it, and inspires me and gets me excited to do this job every day.
Well, what is your mix between, say, startups to large mature companies? Is it like a very evenly spread out, or
Yeah, if you do it long enough, I think it gets evenly spread out. My mix is probably about 70%, 80% company work, and 20-30% investor side work, working with venture capital firms. But at the company stage, my dream personally is to take a company, incorporate it, work with it through IPO and beyond. I did one of those recently. We had a company that went public last year, and the founder asked me, he said, "Is this the first time you ever incorporated a company and took it the whole way?" And I had to think about it, and I went back, and it was the 5th time. And that's like, a pretty awesome, kind of like, wow, that's pretty cool. But it's pretty split. It's pretty evenly spread. I work with 4 public companies currently, and have a bunch of, companies along the other, kind of any phase of growth. It gets pretty, over time, it kind of gets, spread out well.
Mm-hmm. Give me a sense of obviously, I know you work with a broad range of technologies, industries, but give me kind of a sense of the breadth of the kinds of companies you work with.
Yeah, sure. It's mostly, it's all in the tech space. I have, early on in my career, I did a mix of life science and tech, but quickly kind of ended up, just because that's where my network went and the types of things I was working on, toward technology. Most of it's enterprise software of some sort, whether that's, SaaS or other types of enterprise businesses. But I have, things from consumer. I have a couple of HR sort of plays. I represent a couple gaming companies, a few healthcare IT companies. It's a really good mix. I sometimes tell people, like, if you go back and look at like what the venture community has invested in the prior 5 years, my mix those next 5 to 10 years looks pretty similar to that mix, just as things get started and grow.
Are you seeing a lot in the blockchain or token space now? Are you doing a lot of token offerings or NFTs? Because that seems like that's obviously a new technology trend.
Yeah, for sure. We're seeing a ton of that. We have a great kind of Web3, crypto, blockchain, whatever we want to call it, team, people that have actually come to us, some homegrown over the years that have, really gotten up to speed in that, 4 or 5 years ago and are now leaders in it, like Mitzi Chang and Karen Ubell and Grant Fondo. Those three people lead that practice. And we're real fortunate because it seems almost every deal you're doing now has, well, we may issue a token at some point, even if it's like, seems totally off the beaten path from what they're doing in their business. And so having, it's one of the as I mentioned earlier, we have these expertises and we've built, trying to see what's coming next in our technology industry to make sure we're covering those places. We have these great colleagues we can pull in, and they've actually recently, kind of gotten all of us corporate guys up to speed by doing internal trainings on things we, should be knowing, et cetera. But yeah, you're seeing a ton of that. I don't by any means hold myself out as an expert in the blockchain world, but we have great people at it.
Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about, do you tend to work more with repeat entrepreneurs, or do you have a lot of just first-time entrepreneurs that have never done it?
Yeah, it's a good mix. I think one of the most rewarding things as a corporate lawyer when you're doing this is the founder that you represented previously, whether it's a good outcome or a less satisfying outcome for them, they call you the second time. So I have a bunch of those that I'm, grateful for, and it's great because you've built this, multi-year, decade long sometimes, relationship with those folks. And so I have a lot of that. And then I get a lot of referrals from those types of people that I've worked with in the past or are currently working with other people, other founders that they've, are buddies with, or somehow have gotten to know, coworkers, et cetera, that are starting something. So my referrals come mostly from either existing founders or founders I've worked with previously and venture capital firms.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned that you were early in your career, you were at Gunderson Detmer, which is sort of more of a corporate boutique. Obviously, now you're at Goodwin, which is a much more full service firm. Compare and contrast that for me a little bit, and which do you like better, and what do you find the differences to be?
Yeah, so both great firms, and in the technology world, both doing similar things. When we a couple other guys, Craig Schmitz and Jim Riley, and I left Gunderson around the same time in 2010 to join Goodwin. We were actually hoping, we were looking for a broader platform. We actually thought to do what I've sort of described we'd like to do around clients from day one through public company and beyond, making sure we had sophisticated capital markets teams, sophisticated public company practice areas, M&A, et cetera, right? That we needed that broader platform that a larger firm like Goodwin provides that Gunderson did not have, just so that we can actually, at every step of the way, stick with our clients, make sure they know that we're best in breed at all of those in all of those places. Gunderson had a great culture. Goodwin has an amazing culture, and so I think we didn't give up anything there. We got a broader platform that, as we saw technology growing and becoming sort of everything in today's economy, we thought it was important to be able to provide that set of services to our clients.
How do you think venture capital startups has changed since when you started practicing in the mid-90s, or is it essentially really the same thing? I mean, tell me a little bit how you think it's evolved and in what way.
There's a lot that's still the same. A lot of the structures of the deals are the same. A lot of the terms are the same. A lot of kind of what's quote unquote market has stayed completely the same. What's changed is it's a lot bigger. There's a lot more venture firms at it. There's a lot more money at it, right? The rounds are a lot bigger. Interestingly, it's a lot more international, right? There used to be, you talk to one of our venture clients and say, oh, hey, we have an interesting company that's based in Southern California. And they say, I don't get on planes to go look at companies because I have such a, target-rich environment that I can drive to around here. Now you have, Silicon Valley-based firms doing deals all over the world, right? You have Southern California, which we just referenced, is now the third biggest venture market in the U.S., right? So that's changed quite a bit for the better. It's great that entrepreneurs in a bunch of different places, not just in the U.S. but elsewhere in the world, can start cool companies, can have access to that capital, I think that's been a real positive change. That globalization of venture, I think, has been great. That's probably the single biggest change, that and the dollars and the way, funds are structured and the types of funds that are investing in our clients.
Is also, since the funding sources have increased, Kleiner Perkins and Sequoia and Menlo kind of controlled everything on the road now, right? I mean, there's so many funding sources, they don't have the monopoly on all the best deals anymore. Isn't that true?
Oh, it's for sure true. I think the venture business has gotten, much more competitive, and it's gotten, you used to have kind of venture firms that did early and they oftentimes stay with the companies in series B's and C's. It's much more stratified now. You'll have, not just angel investors, you'll have, professional angels and professional seed investors. You have rounds that are even earlier than, what that series A may look like, which means that some of those traditional firms, Richard, that you were sort of referencing, they may not be the first money in, right? So their pipelines have changed on how they identify the best deals and how they find them, because there might be, angels or seed investors that have, gotten the founder's ear prior to some of those more, what we think is kind of the more traditional, venture firms. And then, later on, later stage funding or that mid-stage funding has gotten, super competitive around giant rounds and high valuations and, big firms, big money firms like SoftBank and some crossover funds that have done some public and some private investing with just huge dollar amounts that can change that, can just change the nature of the round and the nature of a company, right?
Right. Well, you may or may not know this. I actually started my career at Venture Law Group, which was, of course, a competitor to Gunderson. And of course, a lot of the venture VLG guys, many of them went on become venture capitalists themselves. Is that something you ever could see yourself doing? I mean, you've been doing this for 25 years. I know a lot of those lawyers went on to become successful venture capitalists. You ever seen?
Yeah, for sure. You have a bunch of your fellow alums that have done that. It's not something that's, I think, is in the cards for what I'm doing. I might have been voted least likely to be a lawyer in 10 years if they gave that award out in law school. But, I sort of fell in love with what I do, and I've figured out a way of doing it where it's, sustainable and I enjoy it. And, I'm 52 now. I kind of see myself doing this for the rest of my career because I really do love it.
Yeah.
If you would have asked me that 15 years ago, or 20 years ago, I might have said, yeah, I hope so. But now I love what I do, and I think I'll probably do it for the rest of my career.
Well, I was just going to ask you that. I mean, even though you said a lot of it's remained the same, I mean, you still having it fun. You find it still interesting, just as interesting as it was when you started it.
Yeah, I think you become, quote unquote expert in the areas of the law and the types of deals you do. And I think if that's what gets you going, right, is like the provision in this agreement or something along those lines, that may be hard to stay stimulated for, decade after decade after decade. What I enjoy most about it is it is varied, the advice that you give, the types of issues that your clients bring to them, how you help them solve those. That never gets boring for me. That's always exciting and interesting. And as you get a little more senior or old, it kind of becomes what you end up doing most of the time. And that is, that part never gets old for me, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, Anthony, it's always a pleasure to talk to somebody who loves what they do. If you do decide to do something else and say become a venture capitalist, you'll have to come back and tell me about it.
I will, for sure.
This is Richard Hsu and Anthony McCusker. Thanks.
Thanks, Richard.
Thanks.